All right, guys. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this conversation. I have never met a black Republican. So, one of my really good friends' brother is a black Republican. I said, I would love to talk to him and understand why he is a Republican. When I feel like Republicans are so rooted in racism and hate. And so I said, I would just love to hear a different perspective from an educated black man. Make sure y'all tune in. Elger, you are the first black man I knew who identified as a Republican. Tell me about that.
Mitt Romney lost my vote when he made the offhand joke about, you know, I no one's ever needed to see my birth certificate. I would have told you the party of the saints, the party of God is the GOP. The GOP equals God. That was it right there. Jesus is not a Democrat. He is not a Republican. God is neither.
We learn from the best of the best. Dr. Eldred Marshall, thank you so much for joining me.
Dr. Edwards, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so we're going to get right into it. Eldred, you are the first black man I knew who identified as a Republican. Tell me about that. I know, right? And
You
tell
gotta
the
get out.
whole story.
You gotta get out more.
I'm not hanging around the right people.
But go ahead with the question. Go ahead with the question.
That's my question. Tell me more about that.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, my parents are lifelong Democrats. My sister, a lifelong Democrat as well. However, I was the black sheep of the family because I adored George Bush when he was president when I was a kid. Even though I remember Reagan as president, but I was a little too young to really know what was going on. But George Bush 41, I just took to him. He was my guy. He was it. And in 1992, I was vociferously supporting him while my parents were going for Clinton. My dad was super excited about Clinton because my dad comes from Greenville, Mississippi, which is on the Mississippi Delta, and Hope, Arkansas is not too far away on the other side of the river, and all of that. It's just, yeah, whatever. And so um, I so the 8 years of Clinton, I kind of was like, I was not feeling his policies. I was not really agreeing with what his approach to things. Rather, I preferred Bob Dole in 1996, and I thought that he would make a better president, but of America did not agree with me. And then in 2000, my very, very first vote for president in the Republican primary was actually for Elizabeth Dole. And I got and so I get to say, ooh, my very first vote for president was for a woman. And
Yes.
so and Elizabeth Dole, I really was fascinated by her in '96 because I felt that she was the breakout star of the '96 Republican convention. And I really enjoyed how she just came down from the lectern, had a mic in her hand, and it was like she was like at church, just like preaching the word of Bob Dole. It was amazing. And but in 2000, Liz Dole didn't win. It was George W. Bush instead, and I supported him, and I supported him all the way to the end, including Florida 2000. And let's just say, in an environment where in college, where so many of us are so plugged in to our respective candidates, that was a very tense time. But almost, I kept all of my friends. And
Congratulations.
yes, yes, and I was and so I knew that number 537 would be really something unique. But the reason why I supported George W. Bush in the campaign was because I did believe in compassionate conservatism. Because as a man of faith, I like the idea of there being compassion in our politics, but also understanding why a conservative idea could be compassionate or follow in the ways of faith. And so George W. really making that link for me is what solidified me in the party. And also, I really loved how George W. was about diversity. I knew that when voting for him was also meaning that Colin Powell, my childhood idol, was going to be Secretary of State. And I knew Condoleezza Rice, who was my boyhood crush, would be in the White House too. And I was thinking, I am voting to get them in the White House. Yes. I don't care about Al Gore. I want Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice. I want George W. Bush. and so and so I supported George W. all 8 of those years. Yeah, there were some things that I liked, some things that I didn't. Some things that we've learned since that, well, should have done differently. But he was someone that I felt was really good for the country and really had a heart for the country. I did eventually vote for my first Democrat in Barack Obama in 2008. And it wasn't so much because I didn't like John McCain. I actually was okay with John McCain, even though I was a bigger Bush fan than McCain fan. And most Republicans would, back then we were kind of in those camps, like you're a Bush Republican or a McCain Republican. Shows how quaint it is now. Um, but I knew that Barack Obama was something different and he was someone special. And even though I was a registered Republican, I knew that I wanted to vote for who I felt would be best for the country at that
Mm,
moment.
mm,
And so I knew that Obama would be my choice, and I went ahead and voted for him. And but I thought, okay, this is a one and done. Obama first time around, yeah, 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 get him in. And then, but by 2012, I'm kind of like, what are the Republicans doing over there? Let me see how I'm going to vote in 2012. And so I was what they call a swing voter. Yeah, I could have voted for Obama, but I could also have voted for a Republican should that Republican not have been, um, have treading the line of racism and kind of stuff like that.
mhm, mhm,
And when they picked Mitt Romney, I was excited because I supported Mitt Romney when he ran for governor in Massachusetts in 2002. I thought he was fantastic, and I had followed him those 4 years that he was there, and I also knew that he had done the whole healthcare thing that I was excited about. And instead of it being universal healthcare like a single payer system, he came up with a more conservative approach to it that really caught my attention and caught my eye, and I thought that's fantastic. Little did I realize that Barack Obama would take that approach and take it nationwide in the Affordable Care Act. Uh, but then,
Interesting. So do you think that if the Republican Act it has the conservative approach embedded in it?
yes.
Interesting.
Um, so yeah, so the thing about it was that um Mitt Romney lost my vote when he made the offhand joke about, you know, I no one's ever needed to see my birth certificate. And because he was doing a speech in Michigan. He's like, yes, I was born here in Michigan, and no one's ever asked me for my birth certificate. And we all know that in that context, where Barack Obama had to come into the press conference room, hat in hand with papers to say, I am an American citizen. I
Mhm,
am not a king. I was not born in Kenya, and we all know why that was.
mm,
I'm like, oh, Mitt Romney's playing with racism. I'm not. I'm gonna vote for Obama again.
mhm,
Okay, so I
mhm,
voted for Obama again. Then 2016 comes around. Jeb Bush is running. I'm excited because he's a Bush. Yeah, now I knew he was a little more conservative than the brother, and definitely more conservative than his father. But I figured, he's a Bush. He'll be okay. Well, Barbara Bush made the offhand joke that America's tired of Bushes, and little did we know that her big mouth would basically put us on the path to where we eventually went. Um,
mhm,
and I knew that Trump was not an option for me at all,
mhm,
because of the birther stuff. But then, and when he came down the escalator and then talked about, Mexicans being drug dealers and rapists and all that kind of stuff, and maybe they're sending their best people. We don't really know. Kind of casting
mhm,
aspersions on all things, all
mhm.
people, from
Yep.
other places. I was like. there's absolutely no way that I would support this man. Uh,
Mhm.
However, I figured there were, good Republicans, and then there's Trump. And so I was among the crew that, yes, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I literally held my nose because I had 24 years of animosity built up towards this woman. But I figured
Why? Where the animosity come from? What bred it?
1992, I did not like the Clintons. I didn't like Bill, and I did not
Mm.
like Hillary, either one of
Why?
them.
Why you don't like them?
I did not like them because even though I
Now
was
you
only
do know I'm from Arkansas, right?
even though I was only 11 years old, my gut told me these people are not honest. These people are not, they are not a good character. They're not a good, they're intelligent, but they will always try to skate the law for personal gain. And that was and so that belief was embedded in me as early as 11 years old.
Oh, wow,
So
wow, wow.
when you come 24 years later to 2016, and here it is, you're hearing about the email scandal. You're hearing about,
Mhm.
certain actions she took as Secretary of State that
Yep,
could have looked
yep.
maybe, or the Clinton Foundation or the Clinton Global Initiative, and but it wasn't quite the Carters because it was really more about personal enrichment, or at least that was the claim. It took
Mhm.
it. I had to work through a whole lot of gunk to finally say, okay, I will vote for Hillary Clinton just because Donald Trump is
Bad,
um
bad,
that bad.
bad, bad. It was an anti-vote. Like, I'm not voting for you. I'm voting against someone else.
Yep. To put my business on the street, yeah, I went ahead and like voted for Hillary Clinton on top of the ticket, but then the rest of the ticket was mixed. There were some Democrats, there were some Republicans, that I would support, because I was always looking at the individual. And it wouldn't be until 2020, after everything, that would be the first time I ever voted straight ticket down, all the way down.
Oh, wow.
And I felt so sad. I felt like a part of me was like, "What did I just do?" And so I had to call my parents and be like, "Mom, you're not gonna believe this. I actually voted straight ticket Democrat for the first time in my life." Uh, and and they were like, "Well, we knew this was gonna happen one day, son."
Eventually. We were waiting for you to come over. You were in the dark side for a while.
Yeah, but but I don't identify as a Dem because I still harbor those conservative values that I grew
Mhm.
up with, that I still believe in. Like like
What are the conservative values that you feel like you harbor?
for example, um, I I believe in a strong, robust defense. I believe that that we've got to make sure our military is the best, the biggest, baddest, best in the world at all times, so that we
Mhm,
could not only protect ourselves and our interests, but also help other people around the world in case they get caught up in whatever they may be
mhm,
caught up
mhm,
in.
mhm,
I mean, for example, I still ascribe to the idea that we should be spreading democratic values and around the world. Even though some people may take issue with that in this current day and age, I still believe in fiscal responsibility, and
mhm,
making sure that the federal budget is as balanced as possible, but
mhm.
not just balanced, but also it is efficient. And we cut out all the waste, fraud, and abuse, and everything that goes with that.
So
I
you think that's a
also
conservative view, or is this? Because believing in a balanced budget doesn't feel like a conservative viewpoint.
but in the context of which I grew up, it is. Because
Ah,
see, back in the 90s, see, this is where Bill Clinton, one of the last things Ronald Reagan said, while he was still lucid, was that Bill Clinton is stealing our ideas. Because see, the
mm,
Democrats opposed balanced budget amendments, and the idea of balanced budget, because they felt that
mhm,
those were just cuts of social services, and
mhm,
that was the prevalent idea in the 80s and the 90s. And Bill Clinton's in 1995 stood up and said the era of big government is over, and
Mhm.
decided to work with Newt Gingrich to come up with balanced budgets, and then came up with this big surplus and everything. Like, and so and so a lot of Democrats were like, "Yay, Clinton!" I'm like, "Well, actually, Clinton came to our side, and so yay, our side for sticking to the principles." Uh, but but see, but the thing is though, but in this contemporary time period, neither party agrees with that principle anymore.
Mm.
Dick Cheney famously said in, I think, 2002, 2003,
Mhm, mhm.
deficits don't matter. And then you had Donald Trump, who came in and busted the national deficit by like five, like quintuple the deficit, like, and that was before COVID. Like, what are we doing? Uh, but but yes, at the same time, I hate taxation. I don't believe in taxation. I That's one of those things where I know every April 15th, I'm like, oh, come on. Why am I paying these taxes? But but at the same time, when it comes to social issues, yeah, I do tend to go a little center right, on a few things, where I mean, I for the longest I grew up pro life, and and it wasn't until recently that I started listening to people around me that were not men,
Mhm,
and learned why things that look like abortion is not really abortion, but is healthcare, and it's more
mhm,
complicated than it seems.
mhm,
But that whole issue of life, was something that I gravitated to and thought, oh, we've got to protect the unborn because they can't protect themselves.
mhm,
But it's much more than that, and of course I've
mhm,
learned that now. Um, and of course I was also, I'm also somebody who's pretty conservative in his personal mores, and so I figured, the Republicans, in terms of talking about being the party of God, the party of faith, those should be my people, and so
ah. Did it
and
feel like
so yeah.
did you, like, buy into a marketing ploy? Like, did they
Well, here's the thing. It what it I did I'm kind of, I would say that I bought into it in my early days,
Mhm,
and it wasn't until I got older and matured and started, you know, learning
mhm,
about other people's stories and other people's experiences, that my views became much more nuanced.
So how are you making the how do you think about religion and politics now? Like how are you how have you crafted
Oh,
it now?
oh my goodness. Okay, so if you were to talk to the Eldred Marshall of the 80s and the 90s, and even of the Yale days, the college days, even into my early 20s, I would have told you the party of the saints, the party of God, is the GOP. The
Mm,
GOP equals God. That was it right there.
mhm,
Um, what pulled me away from it was when I decided to, around 2000, between 2003,
uh-huh.
maybe 4, until about 2008 or 9 or so, of that period where I decided to throw everything out, throw all of the
Mm.
noise, the baby, the bathwater, everything, burn the house down, rebuild it new, rebuild anew. Um,
Why'd you
a-
decide to
a-
do that?
because I felt like I had been lied to.
Ah, ah.
And I needed to learn things for myself. I love to read. This is a little part of my library. It's like this is a whole thing. I love reading, and so I wanted to do my own reading. I wanted to do my own work. And
Mhm,
one of the things that I decided to reread, even though I'm a National Bible Bowl, contestant and local Bible Bowl champion for my region of Southern California, I decided to reread the Bible from, beginning to end, and read it, not in the not hearing the voice of my dad in his sermons, or all of that. I wanted to just
uh-huh.
just try again. Um, and as I was reading and as I was studying, that's when I began to realize so much of what I believed was wrong.
Ooh.
And one of the things that I came to discover that was wrong was the idea that the GOP equaled God.
Mm.
And I because if you read certain parts of the Bible, yeah, you can see where, okay, I can see why Republican exists here. But then but when you read other parts of the Bible, you're like, wait a minute, that sounds like that sounds like a garden variety Democrat.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
know?
Yep.
And so I'm just like, which is it? And that's
Um,
when I came to realize it's neither.
mm.
And so that's why every election cycle, I say every 4 years, every 2 to 4 years or whatever, when there's a big election, I preach this to my Christian brethren that it is that Jesus is not a Democrat, he is not a
Mm.
Republican. God is neither. like you have you cannot mix God and
Mhm.
mammon and
Mhm.
expect to come up with
Mhm.
something holy.
Yes.
It does
Yes.
not work. Um it's 'cause I mean, for example, I have people in my church, even though I go to a majority black church, I have folks in my church who um who are for Trump, and they believe that, that's because, Trump is going to help it make it easier for us to preach the word of God in the public square,
Mm.
or yeah, he got rid of abortion because abortion is a sin, and so therefore, he's helping to he's defending the faith for us. And I'm like, well, you do realize that if you read the word, you discover that human government, even though God ordained human government, we are Satan isn't everything. So
Mhm.
this is his little time frame in this moment.
Mhm.
We're waiting for Jesus to crack the sky to, to take us up and to start all afresh. I mean, we're waiting for the second coming of Jesus. You cannot create the second coming of Jesus through politics. And
Mm. Mm.
and on top of that, it's like, um but what God does tell us to do in this moment that we're not doing is how do we treat the least of these? And that's when
Ooh.
I look at Trump and I'm like, well, you're talking about immigrants as now, and now you're talking about how they're eating cats and dogs, and how they're, how they're drug dealers and bringing fentanyl and all this other crazy. And I'm just like, brother, that's not that's no,
Mm.
Jesus is nowhere in that.
Mm.
Jesus is
Mm.
nowhere in. I mean, Jesus, in fact, Jesus, I would even postulate that Jesus was not even in the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now, that's something
Mm.
I wouldn't have said 20 years ago, but now looking
Ooh.
at it, I'm like, wait a minute. When we took out Roe v. Wade, those of us who are not medical professionals, we get to learn, gee, there are women dying because it doesn't exist. Jesus would not want the woman to die in a parking lot. He would want her to live.
Mhm.
How can she
Mhm.
live? Well, if we listen to the people who have those MDs telling us we need this law in order to provide proper OBGYN care,
Mhm.
then I think we should go ahead and put that law in place to provide the proper care so that a woman
Mhm.
can live and the baby can live too. And on top of that, nobody on the Trump side or even in Project 2025, which I've skimmed, are talking about how we could, help women who are poor. If they have children, how can society help them with diapers or food or
Mhm.
shelter
Mhm.
or whatever? It's like, what are we doing? We're and so that's when I began to question a lot of this idea that, GOP equal God. And then
Mhm.
the last thing that really just broke it open, just busted it open, was that, and my dad, I love my dad. He and I used to argue like cats and dogs about this, about the idea that America's a Christian nation.
Mhm.
I believed back in the day that, yes, America's a Christian nation founded on Christian principles, and we've got to, make sure that we defend the 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 sanctity of Christ, as it was founded. And my dad, who has actually now written a book about this, by the way, uh, it's basically like, no, son, that is not how any of this works. Excuse me. Um, he's like, he's like, first of all, son, let me help you out. If you if if this were a Christian nation, then why was there chattel slavery in the outset, in the
Mhm.
beginning? Why was
Mhm.
it written into the Constitution?
Mm.
You can't tell me the Constitution has has any kind of biblical influence with
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And 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 I was like, well, what the Declaration of Independence has Bible scriptures in it, and it sounds biblical. He's like, well, Thomas Jefferson's well read, son, but have you actually read the Jefferson Bible? Here, let me show you what it is. And that's when we learn that Jefferson takes out all of the miracles of Jesus and takes out the resurrection and the death and resurrection of Jesus. And I'm like, well, Dad, if he did that, he can't be Christian. He's like, no, son, he wasn't. And I'm like, oh, so deism wasn't Christianity? He's like, no, it
Mhm.
wasn't. And I'm just like, oh. And so eventually I began to look at American history and look at American politics, rereading it from not the stuff that I learned in
Ah,
public school, but rereading it in a more scholarly context, and discovered, wow, we really are a Christian nation. So
And how did that feel once you what you believed since you were a child, and your dad was trying to convince you that you was wrong? Once you realized that he was right, how'd that feel?
well, when you get to a certain age, you realize your parents are smarter than you think. So it just kind of kind of it felt organic, if that's the
Mm.
right word. Because when you're a teenager, and even in your 20s, you think you know it all. Nobody can tell you anything,
Yep.
and so. But when you get mature and you listen to your parents again and respect their wisdom and their
Yep.
insight and you actually do your homework like they tell you to,
Yes.
then you're like, okay, I can see what's up. Um, and and one thing that my mom was trying to explain to me about how America's not a Christian nation, she would take me right to the Bible where it says talks about the year of Jubilee,
Mhm.
and and how in the year of Jubilee is where that seventh year where all of your debts are forgiven, and and she's like, well, son, where in America do we forgive debts? I was like, oh, so. And in fact, one of the reasons why, and this is just my own personal theory, I have no evidence for this, but my own personal theory, one of the reasons why Joe Biden had so many problems in towards the end was with the powers that be in this country was because he fought so hard to forgive, like with a magic wand, student loans. And by forgiving
Mhm.
those student loans, he was affecting the financial structures
Mhm.
by which
Mhm.
so many industries were depending, and or not rather the industries but the owners of those industries. They're like, no, we make profit off of these loans. Why are
Yep.
you going to just forgive these loans like that? No, we don't
Like,
we
how
don't
dare
want Trump.
you?
We don't want Trump, but we don't want you. So you go, he go. Let's see if we can get another Democrat who's not going to do this same thing of forgiving billions of loans at one time. And so, but that's just my own personal theory. There's no evidence, and I'm sure, you know, 40, 50 years from now, some scholar will find this podcast, take this theory, run with it, and maybe extrapolate and come and try to find proof or whatever. But I mean, honestly, that was probably um, as much as Israel Palestine is an Achilles heel if he is. Student loan forgiveness was another one, but not for the
Mm.
reasons that I believe we are being told in at least the mainstream media. But again, that's just me.
That's just your
Um,
theory.
yeah.
All right, we're going to pause for meditation.
Okay.
Now we will pause for a moment of meditation with Dr. Crystal Jones. Hmm. So I I asked my question, but you didn't even get to introduce yourself. So tell us about you. How do you show up in this world? Who are you?
Oh my goodness. so so hello, I'm Eldred Marshall. I am a concert pianist and conductor. Uh, of classical music, and I at the same time have a very strong political background where I studied political science at Yale University, graduated with honors, and I worked campaigns and for elected officials, believe it or not, on both sides of the aisle. So I got to strategize with some of the best in California, and but I switched from politics to music full time in the year 2009 when I decided to get my master's in music at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and then and basically went from SMU to University of North Texas, where I got my doctorate in music and piano and then orchestral conducting.
Awesome. Wonderful. What impact on the world do you want to have?
Impact on the world. Oh, so I want to leave this world better for how I found it, and I also want to be. I also want to be a servant, just to serve my
Mm,
fellow man in all that I do, in terms of music, or if it's to help them figure out what how political systems work or whatever, just to be a resource to whoever
mm.
needs it.
Yeah. I have to say, saying that your desire is to be a servant, that for a piece of your line that you identify with the Republican Party just don't seem aligned. Um,
Oh, come on, come on. There are good Republicans out there. There are good ones. There are good ones. Uh, but I mean, what I want to do, what I'm hoping, what I'm really hoping is that um, if Trump loses, and that is a big if, I'm not gonna lie. Uh, if he loses, I hope he loses big, and it will be big enough to where people like me can come back to the party and fight to rebuild it from the ashes and
mm,
make it a much better, more inclusive, more open-minded party. Something that's not so racist,
mm,
nativist, and xenophobic, and and into Christian
yes,
nationalism. We
yes,
cannot have that.
yes. You said something there that really stuck out with me because the party has become so racist and xenophobic. It's pushing everyone away. But
Yes.
I think what you're saying is like, but it can be rebuilt. That there are still values there. We can take away the stuff that's garbage and actually rebuild it to be a different voice in the way that we need. And so that's a really interesting perspective of under. I think what happens is the racism leads, and so people are like, I can't go, I can't, because no, because the racism piece, and they are unwilling or unable, or just because that ranks so high to look past it to anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, and I really think that, for example, if you look at Michael Steele, who is the former RNC chair,
Mm-hmm.
he I think he's one of those Republicans who's leading the charge in terms of being ready to come back in to rescue the good values while clearing out the bad ones to help rebuild the
Mm-hmm.
party. Another example of that would be Anna Navarro. A lot of people forget she's a Republican. Even though she's voted for all three elections against Trump, uh, she 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 knows that yes, we there are the traditional fight against communism, against autocracy, the national security emphasis, the ability to look out for one's neighbor and still make sure that government is being as efficient as possible. Those are some of her values, and
Mm-hmm.
ready to come in and use her massive platform to
Hmm.
help rebuild the party in that respect too.
So you have a degree in this, a background in this, to understand the passion for it. Most of us, a lot of me, I don't. And I don't know where to go and get information quickly that's not jaded. I think that's my fear. No matter where I go find something, it's going to be jaded towards a particular view. So can I go find the real stuff that's not been lent one way or the other, or is it just impossible to do? Where is it at?
Oh my goodness. So news sources as it comes to our politics, it's really difficult to find now that's not jaded, not slanted one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, I I used to watch a lot of Fox News. I will admit that. However, I stopped watching when I
Thank you for
discovered.
being authentic with us.
Uh, however, I stopped watching it when I started realizing that it was going in a direction of skewing towards what is called confirmation bias of the I want to say your stereotypical or your imaginary rural white man. Like that's where it stared going, and I'm just like, this, what are you doing? And so and when I would juxtapose it against, say, an article from the New York Times, and read what the story was, and then watch the Fox News coverage of that story, that's when I realized they're starting to
Oh.
untether in a rightward direction.
Hmm.
And this predates Donald Trump. This is
Hmm.
not just the Trump years.
Yes.
And then MSNBC, which first started off as NBC News, just continued 24/7. They started untethering to the left. And
Hmm.
that's when at one point I couldn't tell the difference between Occupy Democrats and other super left wing publications, and what
Hmm.
MSNBC was saying. And I'm like, okay, they're starting to untether to the left, but not as much as Fox was untethering to the right. Then
Hmm.
CNN, I've never liked CNN because CNN has always just been about the salacious. Like, ooh, what scandal can we talk about today? This is the new scandal. Ooh, look. And they're just projecting, cynicism into the body stream, regardless of whoever's in charge. And I'm just like, okay, I can't watch them either. So instead, if I were to watch anything on a television screen, which I rarely do anymore, but
Okay.
if I had to, the one source of unbalanced, I mean, sorry, one source of balanced, fair, straight down the middle, here are the facts, wham bam, thank you, ma'am, is PBS.
Hmm.
That's it. Watch the news hour. If you watch the news hour, that's all you need. You don't need, in fact, you don't even need to watch this stuff 24/7. There's no need for 24/7 news. Just watch it for that 1 hour. You'll get a good sense of what's going on domestically, what's going on internationally. You'll get fair and balanced, rational discussion from experts,
Hmm.
not political strategists or wannabe strategists and whatever, or whoever claimed that they did whatever. No, just ex academic experts to tell you one thing or another, and then you're good to go, on with your life. And but if like me, I'm a reader. So what I like to do is I like to read from different sources. Yes, I still read the New York Times because it's still one of the best papers to read. But but if I feel like there's something that I need to get a little slightly different perspective on that's on the political, I would look at Politico, which is an outgrowth of the
Hmm.
Washington Post. Um, those A lot of Post reporters left the Post and started that kind of it was a blog, but now it's a
Hmm.
full on digital journalism site, and so I use it to kind of get a little bit of extra insight into a particular story, and it
Hmm.
also has its international arm for the European Union if I want to get into European news. But honestly, those sites can fail me too. And so I have found, and this is going to sound super pretentious, and I don't care. The best source of American news is not in English. Read. So, for example, I speak French. So, Le Monde, which is the main paper record in Paris, they have an excellent arm for American news, American political news. El
Mm.
Mundo or El País in Spain, excellent American coverage, and they will
Mm.
tell you, and so when they're writing the stories or whatever, it's not with the sense of I want this side to win or that
Ah,
side to win. They're just telling this is
what
what happened.
happened? That makes so much sense. I've never heard
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
That
And
makes
and
so
and if
sense.
you and if you're a radio person, NPR is nice, but it can get a little weird too. But BBC World Service, if you speak English, that's where you go. Go to the BBC because the British don't care about our little two-party system. To them, it's like, yeah, the Americans they're just crazy, whatever. This is the story. And so if you can get over their accent, or if you're reading it, if you can get over a couple of OUs instead of an OR, you'll
You'll
be
be
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have never heard that before. Like, and it's so logical. The best place to get, and this is gonna sound problematic. We can unpack that. The best place to get the news about what's happening here is from someone on the outside because they aren't gonna come. They aren't gonna embed their view into it.
Yep.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Yes, yes. Very interesting. I'm just trying to think, does that kind of thought process or mindset kind of apply anywhere else? That the best place to learn about something is outside of it.
Surprisingly, no. Um, we are our country is unique in this respect.
Mm,
Because if you because see, our news media is so insular where we only basically
mm,
report what goes on here, and maybe
mm,
if there's a rocket strike in Israel, we'll hear about it because as one of my Spanish world history professors told me in Spain, because I studied there for a while, she told me in Spanish when I was taking world history exams, and the one thing I did well on in the oral, it was like we had to speak the history. She said the only thing I did well on was the Israel part. She's like, that's because that's America. So so she dismissed that whole part of the exam because I was an American. I happened to know about Israel, but I couldn't quite articulate the inner workings of the EU in Spanish. But I could talk about Israel. She's like, yeah, that's because you're American. And I'm like, and so but that's because she knew that American media is really just focused on a few themes that only relate to here.
mm,
And we don't and the
mm,
rest of the world does not really exist to us.
Oh gosh, that's so problematic. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, so problematic. Whew. So back to kind of the elections, getting information about candidates, and kind of you might understand their beliefs and their policies because you might know what they are. I'm curious of where I go to Ballotpedia to try to understand what each candidate is saying. I'm curious if that's a
Ballotpedia is
good place to
good.
go or a bad place to go. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Ballotpedia has been good. It's been good. Another good source for good candidate information, regardless of whether it's presidential or local or governor or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, it is League of Women Voters.
Legal
They
what?
League of Women Voters.
Oh, League of Women Voters. I've never heard of
Yes,
that.
they that organization does God's work when it comes to our elections.
Mm,
They will if it's a ballot measure, if it's a person or whatever, they will go find the information, the credible information about what they stand for or what the policy positions they've taken, or
oh,
or
interesting.
whatever, and they will fill it in. And when I worked a few campaigns back in the day, they would send us questionnaires, and it was my job as a staffer to fill it out. Where do you stand on this or where do you stand on that, and da 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 da, and we would fill it out. And of course, and what we fill out, we send it in. And but they would not post what I wrote verbatim. They instead did some extra
Mm,
work of reading what was on our website and reading what
mm,
or what my candidate may have said in the media, like to a news reporter, and that would be overlaid to whatever I wrote, and then that would be
mm.
checked and verified. And what you got online was amazing. Uh,
Not interesting.
so so yeah, so you can do that and be okay.
I'm gonna. I have a question for you. So
Hmm.
my husband had an interesting idea. He said, I feel like the top 2% of people's into if we however we measure them, the top 2% performers of any community, those are the people who should be in politics. They should they have the mindset for it. They should be in politics. So under that theory, would you ever see yourself being in politics?
No.
Okay. And do you
Um,
agree with his theory?
I don't agree with his theory, and no, and I wouldn't be in politics.
Okay.
So let me break it down. So one of the problems with our politics is that almost everybody is cut from the same cloth. We all come in with political science degrees, law degrees, or some sort of graduate degree of like maybe medical school or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Basically all cut from the same. That's the same cloth of student from the classroom.
Yep.
And then, and then on top of that, we all come in with this sense of okay, I we we want to do well for our constituents, but at the same time, we're susceptible to these lobbyists who are feeding our egos every other minute, making us feel more important than we are, and then that kind of power gets to your head, and that's because this same sect of students who are your straight A students from
Mm-hmm.
from from day one have always been wanting to get that ego fed, and so
Mm-hmm.
and so as a result, I actually believe that our body politic we better if we got people who didn't have college degrees, or if we got folks who
Mm.
didn't necessarily finish high school, or maybe they did go to college, but they graduated thank you Lottie instead of summa
Mhm.
cum. Uh,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and we- and they come from different economic strata, because that's another thing. A lot of the people that serve right now, all of them in their personal lives are making at a minimum of six figures, because who has the ability to go to all these community events or these service
Mhm. Mhm.
organizations in the middle of a workday, if you're not retired. You have to have a job that one pays you enough. I mean, sees that thinks that you're important enough to take time off because you won't take time off,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then you got to be able to. Or if you take time off, that unpaid time off, you've already saved enough money to where you can use your own money to fund your candidacy. And if
Mhm.
you're working, a regular 9 to 5, making $50,000 a year, that's not you. If you didn't graduate from high school, that's definitely not you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So so as a result, no, we're not served by having everybody come from the same strata of education, social economic status, and
Mhm.
all of that. And I mean, and even look at our Supreme Court. I mean, this is the absolute worst Supreme Court we've ever come up with. But notice how 6 of the 9 justices went to Harvard, have Harvard degrees. If you have two, I think it's one or two Yaleys on there. Like it's like they're all coming from the same place. Like I mean, think if the court had someone on there who probably didn't have a law degree. In fact, that has happened more times than a lot of people realize. In fact, one of our best Chief Justices, Earl Warren, was never a lawyer. He was a governor. He was the governor of California. But he was the one that organized the court to say 9-0 Brown v. Board, this is what we're doing. No segregation in schools. The Miranda rights, and all, and affirming the Civil Rights Act. All this stuff came from was you know organized by a dude who was not a lawyer. And even Sandra Day O'Connor, she's considered one of the better justices of our immediate era. She When she got out of law school in Stanford, she was a secretary in her firm. They wouldn't let her practice law. And in fact, so her practice of law was so short that she went ahead and went into the Arizona State Legislature, became Senate Majority Leader, and then from there became an Arizona State Judge. And Ronald Reagan then picked her up and took her to the Supreme Court. So I mean, that was
Mhm.
not the traditional path to the Supreme Court, but 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 She was the one that said, "You know what? Affirmative action, I think it should stay because Thurgood Marshall told me." And, like, you could actually you could actually name check Thurgood Marshall like that and remember what he told you and learn from it and change your view to make sure that affirmative action can continue in the University of Michigan and other places before this court decides, the 25-year club, let's just get rid of it, you know? So, no,
That's
I really do think that we need. I, I look at a democracy like I look at a church. If you look at a
Mhm.
healthy church has all walks of life in it. You've got the poor, the middle, the rich, everything in between. You got
Mhm.
folks who are good with their hands, people who are good with their minds, people who are good with with their ears or whatever, and everything is
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
First Corinthians 12:12 says, we are all you know all we are all functionaries in the
Yes.
body of Christ. So so if we were to have a healthy democracy, we have to adopt the body of Christ model, not the this is our best and brightest, therefore let them make all the decisions.
I like that. I like that. It's interesting. Okay, very interesting. Is there anything, a question I haven't asked you? Oh, never mind. I haven't asked you my most important question.
Hmm.
What is your self care routine?
Oh, oh, I had a feeling this question was coming. Uh,
Well, good. You've been thinking about it.
oh,
I almost skipped my question.
my self care routine. So it's interesting when so much of my passion is also my passion is music, and and that is also my 9 to 5, and that's what makes my money.
Mhm.
Um, and politics, I used to do it as a job, and now it's more of a hobby. But
Mhm.
it's still there,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's not so much a game. So neither one of those would be my self care routine. Part of my self care
Mhm.
routine.
Mhm.
Instead, what I tend to do is I because I'm an introvert, my self care routine really does involve books.
Mhm.
So that means reading things that don't have to do with political or music or anything like that.
Mhm.
No, I would just maybe like read a fiction book, or I may
Mhm.
or s- or an or if I'm not if I can't focus enough on a book, I'll then go to the gym and just work out, just lift some weights, just because it's fun to do. And I'm glad I learned how to lift weights because now I can do it properly without getting injured.
Mhm.
Um, and then another thing that I tend to do, um, I also love to travel, and
Mhm.
uh, so so because I can't just get into a plane and just hop over to another place without causing too much damage to my business, what I may do is I may just get in my car and drive around. And just go explore and just go into, for example, here in Texas, one of my happy places is the Texas Hill Country,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is outside of Austin, and it's about 2 hours or so away from where I live here in Dallas. And just go to a park and just sit and enjoy those hills and really enjoy what God created, because those it's just I mean it's gloriously beautiful. It's so beautiful. When I was in
Mhm.
California, my happy place was Santa Monica Beach, and I
Mhm.
would go, but instead of just going to the beach just to jump in the water, 'cause I mean, I'm a beach bum to the extreme. But the thing that I but the thing that I would do is I would go to the beach at night. That Because when you see those
Ah.
waves come against the shore at night, it just makes you realize you ain't but this big, son. God is here.
Mhm.
Let him. You just
You
rest
are
in His arms. Let Him take
you
care
are
of
a
you.
speck. You are
So
a speck like sand.
yeah,
Half a grain of sand.
yeah, for real. Have a great.
That's beautiful. That I was just reading an article about the I think the terminology they use for it is nature bathing, of how just going out,
Mhm,
leaving your devices behind and just
mhm,
walking in nature and like the
mhm.
value it has for
I didn't know there was a term for it. I just
Yep.
learned something. Wow. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
But, like,
'Cause
when
yeah.
I'm not feeling good, I'll just go outside and say, "All right, I'm leave my phone here. Let me just go walk and look at the trees and try to
Yep.
get my mind back
Yep.
right."
Yep. In fact, here in Dallas, they have some bike trails and walking trails that I'll just leave my phone in the car and just go walk for a little bit
Oh,
just to be
wow.
there. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Oh, man, I had a question. You said that you're an introvert. How did you discover you are an introvert?
I don't know. It's kind of like discovering you breathe. I don't know. Uh,
Okay. So how like,
uh,
how do you label it?
oh,
Or what
okay. Now
made you
that
label it?
what made me label it.
Mhm.
So, um, I I at first I thought it was because I thought it was something wrong with me because other members of my family are, they seem to be a lot more outgoing and
Mhm.
more, like never met a stranger or whatever. But for me, I'm the kind of person who's really more like if I go into a new space or there's a lot of new people, I'm the one that's going to go straight to the corner and just observe,
Mhm.
and then I have to work up the courage, and that courage is the word,
Mhm.
to then go up to a stranger and say hello, my name is. Um,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize that this was the case until I started studying foreign languages, and in my language study, I always was a lot of my teachers back in the day criticized me for not talking enough because I was too quiet in the classroom. Because I always in the classroom, I'm never the one to raise my hand and give the answer or to just blurt
Mhm.
out what I'm thinking. I was always the one to just sit back, take the notes, listen, observe, and then if I get
Mhm.
called on, then I will lay it down. Then once it's laid down, they're like, "Yo, why you talking the whole time?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm over here," you know. And then but then when you add in this is not English into the mix, that just magnifies it 1,000%. And so
Wow.
and as a result, yes, I can read it, I can hear it, I can write it, but in terms of speaking it, that's the last thing that seems to work. And so the pronunciation's not quite right, because and I was just like, and I thought, well, but it's because it's just who I am. And so when I have to think of it, okay, working up the courage. Work up the courage to go up to the person and say, "Hello, my name is," or "This is what I'm here for," or whatever. But I don't have this problem whenever I'm on stage, because if I'm doing a
Mm.
concert, oh, the stage is my oyster. Here it is. I'm ready to go. I'm playing the piano. I'm conducting the orchestra. Or keeping the energy up, exciting and live. Or if I'm doing a speech, be it a speech with 1,000 people versus a classroom setting of maybe 30 students. It doesn't matter. I'm on stage, and
Mhm.
here it is. I'm going and going and going, and then when I get off stage, it's like I will then go run and hide from those people. I would just I would already have the shortest exit between the stage and my car
In the
already
door.
mapped out,
Like,
and I'm
let's go.
there. And a lot of my colleagues used to well, actually a lot of my colleagues figured it out, and they were like, "Okay, Elder, you have to stop doing that if you're going to build a career." you, and so back he's still different of mine. He actually intercepted me on that path. He physically grabbed me and took me back out to the hall and made me greet the audience in like shake hands, and he was like, "You're going to say hello, you're not leaving." And I'm like, "Ah." And I'm like, but that he's like, "But that's my thing." He's like, "Yeah, you're an introvert, we know." And I'm just like, "Oh, so other people know I'm an introvert. Okay, so there it is." So
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And then the beauty of it is, once you know, you just learn how to work around it.
yep.
Yeah, you just
Hmm.
learn how to work around it. Like, it's the beauty of, like, your self awareness. Okay, who am I? What makes me go? What makes me stop? What makes me feel comfortable? What makes me feel uncomfortable? What But even though it makes me feel uncomfortable, what do I have to push against to get what I want to get done?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards.